I'm Donna Carey, and I'm a licensed acupuncturist and herbalist, and one of the co-creators of the Acutonic System of Healing and Education. And I'm also a co-founder of Kairos Institute of Sound Healing and of the International Institute of Harmonic Living. And didn't say I'm also a poet, which is one of my deep passions and loves.
I'm Ellen Franklin, and I work with Donna to co-create and further develop the Acutonics Healing System. We co-founded the International Institute of Harmonic Living, a new not-for-profit that's really focused on science, sustainability, and spirituality. And we both provide teaching of the Acutonics Healing System. I came to sound through an extraordinary experience that really transformed my life and was critically ill, a real classic type A senior executive in the toy industry. Some people say I still work with toys, but we think of them as healing tools. And I was quite ill, and someone kept saying, you should go for acupuncture, you should go for acupuncture. And I'd had a challenging experience with an acupuncturist in the past and didn't really feel that I could go. And I reached a point where I was so ill that I finally went to see Donna Carey. And I had 3 treatments with her, and at that time, it's about 15 years ago, she was working with planetary gongs, these exquisite planetary gongs, and an earlier version of tuning forks and acupuncture needles. And I found working with sound to be so life-altering, so transformational, that I left a career in corporate America to work more closely with Donna and to help further develop her work with the Acutonic system.
I got into sound healing, at least the field of acutonics and the larger field of harmonic medicine, after a near-death experience. And I actually heard the music of the spheres. And after that, having come back, I knew I had to come, I was back for a reason. And all of a sudden, I started having information about things I never knew about. In sound, with the planets, Johannes Kepler, things that I had never really studied, that I had just immediate knowledge of. And so then I went on to start to experiment with that, and knew in my healing practice that I had to start bringing these sounds, these celestial harmonies, into the terrestrial milieu. And so I started using tuning forks instead of acupuncture needles, and I started using bowls, but I was probably one of the first people to own a full set of these planetary gongs, and I started working with those and integrating sound more and more into my practice and seeing the quantum results in my clients and my patients, and it was something that was so profound that I knew that I would never probably use needles again. Even though I went on to become the clinical dean of an acupuncture school, probably one of the largest in the country. So that was my personal experience with sound. And I think I was always very sound conscious, being a poet. So, planetary gongs and the tuning forks are actually based on the orbital frequencies of the planets as they rotate around the sun. And so it connects us back with nature and the cycles of nature. And it was a very strong dovetail for me, having studied Oriental medicine, because it's all about cycles and about the macrocosm versus the microcosm, or as Chung Tzu said, heaven, earth, and I are one, and all things and I form an inseparable unity. And so that connection was there for me. And then these planetary velocities, which Kepler calculated in, I believe, 1620.
Yeah.
In last century, a Swiss mathematician, Hans Cousteau, then used mathematical formulas to convert those planetary rotations and velocities into musical tones in terms of hertz. And then we have raised them up 25 to 35 octaves so that they're in the mid-range of human hearing. And we have some that are mid-range, some that are a little higher, and some that are a little lower. But the planets, what they do is connect us to a vast palette of knowledge from the ancient medical traditions of the West and the East. And so we're dealing with sympathies and correspondences. And sympathy is likeness. It's what our modern physics is talking about in terms of string theory. You pluck something here and it resonates and is received somewhere else. So by working with these frequencies, we tune in to all of these resonances, and sympathy at the core, what is it? It's love. Just for an example, we'll pick our planet of love, which is Venus, but there's ancient associations with Venus as ruling the thyroid and parathyroid glands, being associated with the heart and the kidneys. And since she's very feminine and a very feminine archetype, we use Venus for any kind of hormonal imbalances, any type of thyroid imbalances, any type of urinary bladder imbalances, because she also rules the bladder and the kidneys. And on the other hand, her partner Mars rules the adrenal glands. So when we get that very yang energy, that's the adrenal rushing, and Mars rules the head. Mars also rules the immune system. So because it's our warrior archetypally, just like she is our goddess of love and beauty. So they form a perfect balance. And actually in music, they form a perfect fifth. And nature did that. These are the cosmological cycles. This is cosmic music, not chromatic music, not A440. These is the matriarchal system of cooperation and unity.
We were really driven by this understanding of the cosmic music or harmonies, and that is really what drove the development of our whole system of healing, and so that we work with the frequencies of the earth, moon, sun, and planets in all of our tuning forks. We also work with high, middle, and low frequency tuning forks, and conceptually there what we're doing is we're accessing the body on many different levels. And in our work and in our teachings, we talk a lot about heaven, earth, and humanity, as above, so below. And by working on these multiple layers or levels of energy, we're really able to connect the individual to the cosmic harmonies, the macrocosm and the microcosm, and bring them together. And it's really, for us, the idea of working with these frequencies and how we've seen them borne out clinically has been really powerful. For example, Donna talked a little about Mars and Venus, but I like to talk about the sun, the center of our universe. It gives us warmth and heat and sustenance and makes things grow. And clinically, we would work with the sun in the same way. We would use the sun to work perhaps with seasonal affect disorder, with depression, with people who need more nourishment in their physical body. The sun is very yang, brings more energy, more life into the body. And so again, working cosmically, working with something that we understand on a psycho-spiritual level, as well as something that we understand in our heart.
We know these tones. This is part of our family, these system of planets, and we know these in our hearts, and we know these in our cells. And when we work with the tuning forks, we overlay it with Eastern medicine, and we work with some of the more ancient vessels, which are called the embryonic vessels or the strange flows. Some people call them the psychic vessels, but they were used by the Taoist masters to connect with the more celestial blueprint, because it's really our divine self, our immortal embryo. And so we work a lot with those extraordinary vessels, and there's 8 of them, and we say the 8 is, the infinity loop, and it's the connector between heaven, earth, and humanity. Humanity is in the center. We're nourished by earth and transformed through heaven, and it's for us to mediate those energies. Okay. So the tuning forks are kind of the portable part of the system.
Yes.
This is the Mars-Venus fifth.
We talked a little about it being a perfect fifth, and a fifth is an opening in music. It creates a beautiful balance and opening, and we're using Mars and Venus a lot with autism. We have some formal studies going on now with autism, with ADHD. They're being used in school systems on kids that are highly creative, but a little bit overactive, and they can't be grounded. So we take that kind of Martian energy that's adrenal and a little bit overpassionate sometimes, and ground it with the beauty and the balance of Venus, and still keep the opening. So we may use that on particular points, kidney points, or we may use it directly on the heart chakra. We may use it, what we call, to balance the hemispheres of the brains. There's a particular point called the upper star. Or we may use it to access what's called the crystal palace, which is kind of the oval crystal center of our brain. That includes the thalamus, hypothalamus, pituitary. And so by this geometry of using God's mouth in the back and what we call this brow center or yin tang, is the geometry itself creates a perfect fifth. And then when we have this other sympathy of this beautiful balanced fifth, perfect fifth in music, and the archetypes and correspondences that go with it, we have some powerful medicine.
We also work with the new moon fifth. And this is, if you think about the new moon, new beginnings, getting things moving, cycles, it has a yin quality to it.
And we combine it with the Om, which is the earth traveling through the 4 seasons. And it's a beautiful harmonic, but it's not quite a fifth. So we have many fifths, parallel fifths in the system. But the earth itself has 3 tones. It has the earth year of 365 days, which is more balanced. It has its own sidereal spin, which is 24 hours. So you would think that's a lot more generative in building energy. We call it the chlorophyll fork or coffee. So the chi fork.
Let's bring energy
in. And it's slightly dissonant, so it's pushing toward that fifth. It's actually a diminished fifth. So it's pushing toward that opening, and it's creating energy through the dissonance. So we use this to build energy on points that have been heavily researched in Oriental medicine. It's called stomach 36 or 3 mile yang. It's all the yang vessels go through there. And what we do is we know that this point increases immunoglobulins. This is heavily tested. But when we use this chi fork, we stimulate that immunoglobulin production. So it's used a lot, that combination, for cancer support, for chronic fatigue.
When Donna was clinical dean in the acupuncture school in Seattle, she had 14 community clinics that she was responsible for, and had a Ryan White grant to do HIV/AIDS work. And some of the people that they were seeing were so critically ill that they really couldn't tolerate the acupuncture needles. And so they worked with the forks and have amazing results using, again, the Earth Day, which we talked about, and the Solar Seventh to boost the immune function.
Working in the clinics as well, oftentimes as part of Oriental medicine, we use for warming moxibustion, which is mugwort, and we use it on particular points to warm the system and especially the kidneys. And we would often go in clinics where we couldn't use moxa because the smoke would set off the system. And so we would then substitute the sun on the moxa points and almost putting this through our hands like a moxa box. And we're also using this to turn babies that were breech, because one of the classic points is the tip of the little toe with moxa. And when you can't use moxa, we stimulate with the Solar 7. And it was very rewarding to see all of the babies being turned. And of course, we were right there in integrative care with the nurse midwives and with the physicians. So they could do a check immediately to see that the baby was turned. Sometimes, like with a baby turning, it's pretty
Seconds.
Immediate. It's seconds.
In terms of the length of a treatment, Acutonics is being integrated into a spa environment. And in those situations, it might be an add-on to a bodywork session. Mm-hmm. So someone might have 15 minutes of Acutonics as part of being worked on therapeutically by a massage practitioner. Mm-hmm. or it might be combined with an oriental medical treatment where the practitioner might use some needles and some sound. And
Or
so
in
it's
body work, where somebody may be working on scar tissue mobilization, with a
Physical
particular
therapy as
physical
well.
therapists love to do that. Or even in psychotherapy sessions where they're working with those archetypal patterns and having the client simply listen, which starts everything going. They're connecting with the archetype, they're connecting on those many levels with those
Well, from
sounds and images.
depth psychology, from a real Jungian perspective of understanding how we're influenced by archetypes, by mythologies, by the stories we carry with us, and really working archetypally with people, not even on the physical body, but psychospiritually, to listen and to integrate those sounds.
And the babies hear those sounds too, because sound travels 4 times faster in water. We are
70% water.
water, and the baby is in a water sac. So one of our practitioners who does a lot of work in pediatrics and in OBGYN actually works in the field with the babies who just love the ohm sound. Sure, because we're dealing with an ancient form of medicine that's 5,000 years old, Oriental medicine. So we're using the maps that those ancients gave us, which are the meridians, just like there's star streams and maps in the skies and cartography on Earth. This is our cartography. And so these were what the ancients laid out for us. And the older body of evidence is that acupuncture meridians are kind of electromagnetic circuitry. But I think that a lot of people like to think of it like that because we kind of are in a yang age, where everything is gotta go, and we don't really appreciate that yin, and everything is just kind of mechanical, gates, acupuncture gates, you open them and close them, and they're just latching, and shuttering. And the newer thinking is that, no, it's not like that at all. It's very yin, in fact, that the more recent findings are that acupuncture meridians are actually waterways. And so if you think about the beauty of that, when we connect to these points on the body into those waterways, and they have a particular function, this is the way we get into the meridian, we use points. Then they're moving in the waterway and moving 4 times faster. It's affecting the system, on a global level.
One of the intervals that Donna mentioned was she was talking about the zodiac third interval, which is very meditative. It represents Earth traveling through the entire zodiacal system, which is a 25,920-year cycle. And so it has both a dispersive and a gathering of wisdom quality, if you think about something taking 25,920 years. And so that is being used clinically in both the middle and particularly in the low frequency to break up scar tissue. And we have studies that show a woman whose hand was like this and she had a big ropey scar that it softened, and she can now open and close her hand just by working with the low zodiac fork over the scar and working in areas off the body. Sometimes scars are so sensitive that you don't want to work directly on the scar, but you work over the scar. And again, we're seeing that scar tissue, something that people have had great difficulty with doing anything for, that it can start to soften and shift and change.
And increase mobility.
And again, so that's
increased mobility, and those are the things we can measure through range of motion. But what we can't measure, and this is probably my pet peeve with the research, which everybody wants to use the Western biomedical model, we need quantum research. What happens? Yes, we may get more mobility, and that hand might have opened, but why? I believe that scar carries cellular memory, and that it contains the trauma, the initial trauma. And what happens when we're working with these frequencies is that trauma is getting released somewhere, and there's a deeper level of healing and a higher layer of consciousness that an individual moves toward. Now, these are the things that we have to find out how to measure. Okay, so harmonics. The tuning forks and the intervals are more of a pure tone. We don't, unless it's very low, we sometimes will hear an overtone of a third or a fifth, sometimes an 11th. but we have actually 3 octaves and 4 octaves of the tuning fork. So we have kind of the harmonics are the middle, the low and the high, and we might start at the mid-range, and if we see that we need to go into a deeper level, whether it's emotional or we have something like a really entrapped nerve for sciatic pain, and we go to the lower octaves that have a little bit more vibration and power. And then sometimes if somebody's too sensitive, we may work with the high frequency in the etheric field. So those are the 3 layers of the harmonics. We also work with Tibetan bowls and bells, and we put those directly on the body. And those have incredible harmonics and a lot of overtones and undertones. And the beauty of laying them on the body is, they cover a bigger span, and they actually are very comforting. We were talking with one of our colleagues, which was Mitchell Gaynor, and he's an oncologist in New York. And he uses these Tibetan bowls made of the 7 sacred metals, and has incredible, phenomenal results with his cancer patients. And he doesn't really know how they work, but what he knows is miracles happen and people get better. And sometimes we just murder to dissect. It's one of those things where we have to come up with the research that could actually speak to those bigger issues, like the issues of miracles and quantum, going from a class 4 cancer to, cancer-free. So but anyway, the harmonics in those are very profound. And then we get to another level of harmonics, which I mentioned before, are these gongs with these huge sound envelopes. And, those are tuned to specific frequencies like the forks, but you will get a whole range of harmonics, sub and hyperharmonics. You'll get squealing, you'll get dimensional fields, and so it's geometry. I think it's sound taken to such a quantum level that I'm just waiting for the new equipment that can actually test these things or to do studies. But we know they're profound instruments. We've been working with them for 15, 17 years now. And those are what we want the sanctuaries for, and those are what we want to do the bigger healing, the group healings, the community healings, the healing of the planet. Recreate those celestial harmonies on Earth. Start within ourselves, move to our families, our communities, have some new medical models that we can give group treatments.
I think the human body really is a resonator. If you think of, as Donna mentioned, sound traveling 4 times faster in water. So we are a resonator for sound, and it's why we are so negatively impacted by jackhammers in the street, or loud raucous music sometimes can just put us on edge. Why soothing music, peaceful music makes us feel at ease and come more into center and feel more grounded. And so if you think about the impact that music has on us, and then think physiologically how, by working with the acupuncture meridians to access these waterways in the body, we're really affecting change on a physical level.
So, if we look at the body and look at the universe, we'll find it is, one. I am the universe, and the universe is me.